In 2015, Lacey calls 911 because nobody is answering at her neighbor Dee Dee's house and she's worried because her Facebook page had some really disturbing posts. While the police get on their way, Lacey's mother Mel enters Dee Dee's house through a window and finds a disturbing sight. Minutes later the detectives come in and find Dee Dee dead on a bed, but the daughter is nowhere to be found. This all started 7 years ago. Dee Dee lives with her sick daughter Gypsy, who is wheelchair-bound. After the devastation caused by Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Habitat for Humanity gets them a new home in Missouri in 2008 and they get interviewed for it. Gypsy tells the camera that her mom is her best friend. Because of Gypsy's condition, they have a very strict routine. Dee Dee regularly shaves Gypsy's head and prepares dinner by blending it and injecting it into Gypsy's stomach through a tube. When it's time for bed, Gypsy uses a sleep apnea machine, and once the girl is asleep Dee Dee takes a medicine called Sleepy Baby from a closet full of meds. They also sleep on the same bed. The next day, their neighbor Lacey visits Gypsy and offers her a makeover. While they have fun together, the girls bond, but Dee Dee is always spying on them. Gypsy shares that her father used to make fun of her walking before she got the wheelchair, although she doesn't really remember it. After Lacey leaves, Dee Dee forces Gypsy to remove all the makeup. The next day, they go out for a walk and meet the other neighbors. Dee Dee chats with Mel and keeps on mentioning how hard it's to take care of Gypsy because she has paraplegia, epilepsy, anemia, and a heart murmur. At that moment Lacey offers Gypsy some soda but Dee Dee rushes to stop her, informing everyone that Gypsy is allergic to sugar. Sometime later at the mall, Gypsy asks her mom for a necklace and Dee Dee steals it for her. At the last moment, she notices Mel saw everything. Later Dee Dee tries to explain herself to Mel, but she doesn't take her seriously. While Dee Dee is away, Gypsy uses her mom's laptop to look for things like boyfriend kiss, making sure to delete the browser history when she's done. Dee Dee worries about her reputation if Mel decides to talk, so she decides to throw a party for all the neighbors. Gypsy gets to meet other teenagers and Dee Dee talks to every single neighbor to befriend them, but Mel still doesn't buy her friendly act. While Dee Dee tries to win Mel over, Gypsy grabs a cupcake and eats it, but Dee Dee sees her and rushes to inject her with an EpiPen before leaving for the hospital. Moments later, Gypsy overhears Dee Dee having a strange talk with the doctor. When they leave the hospital, Mel shows up to give Dee Dee her forgotten wallet and finally understands the terrible circumstances that her neighbors are in, so they agree to leave bad decisions in the past and have a fresh start. That night while Dee Dee is asleep, Gypsy leaves the bed, revealing she can actually walk. Remembering the conversation with the doctor, she goes to the kitchen and eats some whipped cream with an EpiPen ready, but nothing happens. She isn't allergic to sugar at all and her mother has been lying about it. Gypsy then returns to bed and an awake Dee Dee scolds her for walking instead of asking her for help. As months pass, Gypsy gets more daring and starts sneaking out of bed to secretly watch YouTube on the laptop while eating sweets and drinking soda. One night she feels pain in her teeth, caused by all the sugar she's consumed in secret. The next morning, Dee Dee wakes Gypsy up to inform her she's been named the community's Child of the Year. At that moment Dee Dee notices Gypsy's teeth issues and gets excited over the possibility of another underlying condition. They go to see Gypsy's pediatrician Dr. Harley and Dee Dee says Gypsy's acid reflux has returned, causing the teeth decay. While Harley calls a gastroenterologist Chandra for a consult, Dee Dee steals his prescription pad. Dr. Chandra comes over to check on Gypsy and asks her to make an urgent dentist appointment, however Dee Dee wants to treat the acid reflux first. Getting suspicious, Chandra asks for Gypsy's medical records, but Dee Dee informs her that they were destroyed during Hurricane Katrina. Before Chandra can say more, Dee Dee hurries to take her daughter away. Afterward Chandra asks Harley if he's confirmed Gypsy's medical history, which he didn't. Meanwhile Dee uses the pad to forge some prescriptions and get more medicine from a pharmacy. Sometime later, Gypsy is brushing her teeth when a rotten tooth comes out, causing her to bleed all over the sink. After this incident Dee Dee starts giving her the triple amount of medicine. Eventually Dee Dee allows Gypsy to spend some time with Lacey, who introduces her to her friends. At first the girls finds her a bit weird but soon they accept her in the group. Gypsy explains her mouth is ugly because she's been eating sweets in secret, and the girls sympathize with escaping from parents' rules. Meanwhile Chandra starts calling several hospitals to learn more about Gypsy's medical history, but she doesn't get clear answers so she calls Child Protection Services. When Dee Dee sees the car at her doorstep, she immediately forces Gypsy to take Sleepy Baby to make her seem slow-witted. Agent Allison takes a look around the house while Dee Dee explains her daughter has the mental capacity of a 7-year-old. Then Allison asks to speak with Gypsy alone, yet Dee Dee still spies from the doorway. Allison tries asking Gypsy questions about her home situation, and since Gypsy is dizzy and disoriented, her lack of understanding proves Dee Dee's story. Next Allison asks about some questionable paperwork so Dee Dee uses the hurricane excuse again. In the end Allison leaves without taking any actions because she hasn't found anything suspicious in this home. Afterward Dee Dee covers the house's windows to make them blurry. Later Gypsy is taken to the dentist and when she hears the word extraction she says she doesn't want to do it, but Dee Dee forces her. When Gypsy wakes up from the anesthesia, she's at home and she discovers most of her teeth have been removed, causing her to cry in front of the mirror. During lunch, Dee Dee starts making exciting plans for the Child of the Year event. Gypsy doesn't want to go because she feels ugly, but a furious Dee Dee yells that she's going anyway. On the day of the event, Dee Dee surprises Gypsy with some dentures. Gypsy loves them, but finds it weird that her mother didn't give them to her earlier. When they're called to the stage, they receive a check for $5,000 in financial assistance. Dee Dee says Gypsy is shy and speaks in her behalf, then they sing together. Sometime later Chandra calls Dee Dee to bring Gypsy to do a checkup, and a reluctant Dee Dee must accept to avoid suspicions. While Dee Dee is taken to the front desk to do the paperwork, Chandra talks to Gypsy in private and tries to convince her that she isn't allergic to sugar. She even offers a can of Coke, but Gypsy refuses to drink. Months pass and it's now 2011. Dee Dee has become an expert at collecting donations both through traditional mail and a GoFundMe page. She also keeps receiving some mysterious checks. At night, Gypsy continues to sneak out of bed to use the computer. She learns about Fantastican and cosplay, so she convinces her mother to take her to the event. While getting the tickets, Dee Dee says Gypsy was born in 1995, which confuses the girl because she thought she was born in 1993. Gypsy has a lot of fun and even runs into some of the neighbors. A man named Russ tries to flirt with Dee Dee, but she feels uncomfortable and rushes to the bathroom. Now that she's finally alone, Gypsy uses the chance to chat with a guy called Scott while pretending she's 18. They end up chatting a lot and Scott even picks her up so she can sit in the DeLorean for a picture. Unfortunately their fun time is interrupted by Dee Dee, who announces they're going home. Before they leave, Russ shows up again and tries to get Dee Dee's attention by saying he also had a son in a wheelchair who died, but Dee Dee turns him down once more. While Dee Dee is distracted, Scott asks Gypsy for her Facebook account and finds it weird that an 18-year-old only has a shared account with her mother. That night Gypsy decides to open her own Facebook account in secret, but she doesn't know what birth year to choose. She checks her mother's purse and is shocked to see she was born in 1991, meaning she's actually 19. Angry, she decides to steal some donation money. The next day at a gas station, she buys a cell phone, which she keeps hidden from her mom. Sometime later, Dee Dee receives a call from Russ and wonders how he got her number, but he's so nice that she lets him call him regularly and they grow close. At the same time Gypsy starts chatting with Scott through her new phone and they also grow close. Gypsy tells him about her friends, who are the hospital staff, and Scott shares about his work with the elderly. One day Scott even sends her a wig through mail and Gypsy gets to the mailman before her mother could see it. Now she can privately pretend she has beautiful hair. After a whole month of friendly conversations, Russ offers to help Dee Dee around the house and with Gypsy. Dee Dee doesn't take it well and immediately hangs up. Meanwhile Gypsy goes outside to use the phone and is seen by Lacey, who agrees to keep her secret. Gypsy shares her secret Facebook username and tells Lacey she met Prince Charming, so Lacey believes Gypsy may be just playing around. That night, Gypsy receives a message from Scott informing her that he's in the emergency room and won't be able to text. Worried about him, Gypsy puts on the wig and leaves the wheelchair behind to visit him. At the hospital not even Harley recognizes her. Scott is shocked to see her walk and after Gypsy asks her to keep the secret, she starts talking to him like her mom does, which is very infantilizing. When she hears they haven't given him medicine because he's been drinking, she says he doesn't have to tell the truth if he's sick. At home, Dee Dee wakes up and freaks out when she notices Gypsy is gone. She finds a note in which Gypsy says she ran away with her Prince Charming and signs with her real age. When Scott is released, he goes home and Gypsy comes along. She keeps saying she'll take care of him and they share a kiss. At that moment someone knocks on the door. It's Dee Dee, who has come to pick Gypsy up. At first Gypsy refuses to go, but when Dee Dee starts saying she's having an anxiety attack, Gypsy agrees to leave. On her way out, Dee Dee tells Scott that Gypsy is 14. As soon as they get home, Dee Dee gets rid of the wig and forces Gypsy back on the wheelchair. More time passes and it's 2013. At the hospital, a doctor tells Dee Dee she has type 2 diabetes and must receive daily shots. Dee Dee asks the doctor to reach Gypsy how to help her with the shots, that way she's making her health dependent on Gypsy staying home. When Gypsy's birthday comes, Dee Dee insists Gypsy was born in 1995 and that 1991 was a printing error. As a gift, Gypsy receives a pair of guinea pigs. Later Lacey visits Gypsy and mentions she met a guy on a Christian dating site. Curious, Gypsy asks her to show her the website. Meanwhile Dee Dee gets a call from Gypsy's father, who wants to wish his daughter a happy birthday. He seems a sweet guy, which proves Dee Dee's stories about him being uncaring and having abandoned them are another lie. Dee Dee tells him that Gypsy is very ill and doesn't have much time to live, then she hangs up on him. Another call comes from the hospital to inform Dee Dee that since Gypsy is now 18, any invasive procedures require her consent. Dee Dee tells the nurse she'll talk to her lawyer, then she goes to kick Lacey out. Once they're back inside, Dee Dee yells at Gypsy for leaving the house and forbids her from seeing Lacey again. That night, Gypsy steals $1 from the donation bag, and it's revealed she's been doing this for a while. By stealing a little money at the time, Dee Dee doesn't notice and Gypsy gets to save in secret. The next day they go to see a lawyer because Dee Dee wants to obtain legal guardianship of her daughter. Gypsy answers the lawyer's questions the way her mom taught her, and since she sounds competent enough, the lawyer announces that Dee Dee will have to convince a judge that Gypsy can't take care of herself. Later at the mall, Dee Dee needs to sit down because she feels dizzy and her ankles are swelling, consequence of her diabetes. Gypsy volunteers to go to the pharmacy to get some medicine, but first she stops at a tech store to buy her own laptop with the money she saved, which she then hides in the car. Afterward they go home and Dee Dee forces Gypsy to give her the injection. That night, Gypsy joins the dating site that Lacey told her about, making sure to wear a wig for the profile picture. The next day, Dee Dee scolds Lacey for putting ideas in Gypsy's head. Suddenly Dee Dee faints and must be taken back to the house, where Gypsy takes care of her. They watch Twilight together and Dee Dee covers Gypsy's eyes when the main couple has their first time. Later at night, Gypsy discovers she has messages from 10 men on the dating website and freaks out a bit when she sees a guy sent her a dirty eggplant picture. Then she starts chatting with a guy named Nick, who calls her beautiful. Sometime later Dee Dee contacts her lawyer to ask about a power of attorney. The lawyer explains such a document would only give Dee Dee power over Gypsy if she becomes incapacitated and that Gypsy must sign her consent as well. Knowing she can manipulate her into it, Dee Dee agrees. Days pass and Gypsy continues to chat with Nick in secret. Eventually they meet on webcam and Gypsy tells him about her health problems. In return, Nick confesses he has multiple personality disorder and says his other side is darker. The next day Dee Dee receives the power of attorney documents in the mail and starts planning. She pretends to feel really sick and makes Gypsy take care of her. While she's fake suffering in bed, Dee Dee tells Gypsy horrible stories about the world and scares her into signing the documents, claiming it's a way to protect them both. Afterward she calls Nick and has a breakdown as she tells him the truth about her situation, saying she's been trapped all her life. To distract her, Nick shows her a very dirty drawing. At first Gypsy freaks out, but then she hears him out. The next morning Dee Dee wakes up and sees Gypsy is gone, only to find her in another room sleeping with her laptop. Furious, Dee Dee takes the computer and smashes it with a hammer. Then she screams at Gypsy, who says she'll just get another one. This makes Dee Dee angrier and drags Gypsy to their common bed, where she ties her daughter's hands. A struggling Gypsy spits on her mother's face, causing Dee Dee to pull away as she has a breakdown. Then Gypsy tries to leave, but she hears Dee Dee's pleading words and decides to stay. That night Gypsy texts Nick sharing what happened. He promises to always protect her and teaches her how to use her hand for pleasure. The story then jumps to 2015, revealing that Gypsy has indeed gotten a new computer and uses it to have dirty meetups with Nick online that include costumes. Nick complains that they've been together for 2 years and never met in person, so Gypsy makes a plan. In the morning, Gypsy tries to convince Dee Dee to take her to Disney. However, Dee Dee's health has been getting worse because she refuses to take insulin or exercise. She snaps at Gypsy and tells her to be happy with what they have, which is ironic because the house is currently full of random hoarding and trash bags. Meanwhile in Wisconsin, Nick is starting a new job. His boss shows him how to make a pizza, but Nick accidentally drops the food twice and the boss ends up sending him to be a walking advertisement by the road. When he returns home, he calls Gypsy and they share another dirty game. They pretend to be characters that want to kill an evil stepmother, but it's clear they're implying this is about Dee Dee and that helps them finish faster. The next day, Dee Dee offers Gypsy to take her see the new Cinderella movie. Gypsy is excited and immediately sends Nick a bus ticket plus a fancy shirt, that way he can join them on the premiere and cause a good impression. She even teaches him what to say, which he has to write down. When the day comes, Dee Dee makes Gypsy wear her Cinderella costume. At the theater, Gypsy and Nick are excited to see each other in person for the first time, but when Nick approaches her he fails his opening words and Dee Dee thinks he's a creep stranger, so she takes Gypsy away from him. When they finally sit to watch the movie, Nick tries to sit behind them, however Dee Dee sees him and drags Gypsy to sit somewhere else. Then Nick tries again, but Dee Dee repeats the same process, so Nick ends up leaving. Worried, Gypsy pretends to need the restroom and finds Nick in the corridor, so they rush to hide in the bathroom and share their first kiss. Then they lay on the floor and do the naughty really quickly before Gypsy returns to her mother's side. Once the movie is over, Nick tries to approach them again on the way out, causing Dee Dee to yell at him before dragging Gypsy away. When they arrive home, Nick calls Dee Dee and tells her everything, hanging up before she has the chance to speak. Dee Dee looks calm after the call, however she sends Gypsy to bed and ties her up as punishment. In the evening, Dee Dee releases Gypsy for dinner and she uses the chance to text Nick, asking him to bring out his darker side out. Nick gets on a bus and reads the texts as he imagines Gypsy is there with him, asking him to kill her mother. The next day at the mall, Dee Dee needs to sit again because of the pain in her feet. Using the bathroom excuse, Gypsy goes to a store and pretends she needs a gift for her dad, who is a hunter. The clerk advises her on what knife to choose. Dee Dee realizes Gypsy is taking too long and goes looking for her, but she's at the toy stand and the knife is hidden. That night, Gypsy calls Nick and plays with the knife while they agree on a plan. The following night, Gypsy leaves the bed as soon as Dee Dee falls asleep and packs her suitcase. Soon Nick arrives and Dee Dee gets killed in her own bed. Then Gypsy and Nick escape in a cab and go to hide in a motel. Gypsy feels an anxiety attack coming, so she takes some medicine before getting her costume and the camera so she can record their naughty time together. When they're done, they cuddle and discuss their future. However, Nick isn't very good at chatting in person and Gypsy starts realizing he may not be the guy she thought he was. Then a flashback takes the story to 1991, showing Dee Dee giving birth to Gypsy. Her mother Emma soon enters the room and takes the baby from her arms, already giving her instructions on how to do things. Later at home, Emma keeps on criticizing Dee Dee's motherhood skills, especially when Dee Dee insists Gypsy may be sick. Emma is sure the baby is fine, but they go to the hospital anyway. The doctor informs them that Gypsy is smaller than she should be at 2 months old, but it's very common. She only needs some supplements and for Dee Dee to feed her more. Even while the doctor talks, Emma tries to control the conversation. In 1993, the cops come looking for Dee Dee and arrest her for check fraud. Emma brings Gypsy over so she can watch her mother be taken away. Later in court, Dee Dee gets sentenced to 6 months in prison. She tries to say goodbye to Gypsy, but Emma doesn't let her. In prison, Dee Dee sends letters to her daughter, but never receives anything in return. When Dee Dee is finally released, she rushes home but Gypsy starts crying when she sees her. It's clear that Emma hasn't been following Dee Dee's instructions and she even says Gypsy has been happier with her. Later Dee Dee insists Gypsy is sick, but Emma assures her the baby is fine and proves it with a thermometer. However, Dee Dee thinks Emma wants to make her look like a bad mother and secretly gives her some medicine. In 1997, Emma's health is deteriorating. She's wheelchair bounded and depends on Dee Dee for most things, yet she refuses to go to the hospital. Eventually a doctor comes to see her and informs Dee Dee that her mother's pain tolerance has failed, so she only has a few days to live. The doctor calls Dee Dee a saint for taking care of an old person and a child at the same time, which Dee Dee really appreciates. Afterward Emma calls for Dee Dee, but instead of helping, Dee Dee turns up the volume on the TV and watches a movie with Gypsy. Later Emma starts to struggle to breathe, so she tells Dee Dee that she made it impossible for her to live, then she dies. Hurt by such words, Dee Dee runs to Gypsy and promises she does love her. Sometime later, Gypsy wants to play on the trampoline with her cousins, but her mom doesn't let her. As soon as Dee Dee is distracted, Gypsy runs outside and plays on the trampoline anyway. Unfortunately she slips and falls on the ground, where she doesn't move. Dee Dee runs to her side while her sister calls the ambulance. When Gypsy is released from the hospital, she's on a wheelchair, and Dee Dee makes her stay on it even though Gypsy is better now. A few days later, Dee Dee announces she can't buy her mother's house, so they have no choice but to leave. Back to Gypsy and Nick, they check out of the motel and go to have breakfast. When 2 cops enter the diner, Gypsy begins to panic because they still have the knife. She tries to take the anxiety medicine and accidentally drops the bottle, so a cop picks it up for her and reads Dee Dee's name on the label. Then the couple decides to mail the knife to themselves in Wisconsin to avoid security checks. When the couple makes it to the bus station, they discover that Nick didn't reserve a seat for Gypsy too. This bus is full, so they have no choice but to book tickets for the next one, which leaves in 2 days. They return to the same motel but their room is now taken, so they end up in one with twin beds. Nick watches a very violent movie and Gypsy hates it. That night when they do the dirty, she doesn't have a good time either. Afterward Gypsy goes to the vending machine for a snack and sees a mother with her child, which makes her feel so guilty that she runs back to her room in tears. Eventually the couple makes it to Wisconsin and are picked up by Nick's mom Kathy. On the ride home, Gypsy learns that Nick told his family that she and her mother were homeless. Kathy begins to ask about Dee Dee, causing Gypsy to experience flashbacks full of guilt. At Nick's home, Gypsy meets Kathy's boyfriend and is given a tour. Soon she realizes that this isn't anything like Nick promised. His room is a creepy mess, there's no food in the fridge, and his parents are always rude. Later the couple goes to the supermarket and Gypsy pretends her leg is hurt so they can have an electric cart. While Nick distracts the employees, Gypsy steals food like her mother taught her, but this causes her to see her in every corner. When they return home, Kathy asks about Dee Dee again and the guilt is so strong that Gypsy rushes out of the room. She asks Nick for medicine, but they don't have any. Gypsy cries as she reveals she wants to go back, saying they could live in her mother's house after the body is taken away. First they need to make it look like someone else killed Dee Dee, thus Nick makes Gypsy post some disturbing messages on Dee Dee's family Facebook so people could believe they had a violent stalker. In Missouri, Lacey sees the posts, so she and Mel go to check the house. When nobody answers, they call the police, who soon find the body. In just a few minutes, they trace the Facebook post to Wisconsin. Back to the couple, they receive the envelope with the knife and Gypsy asks Nick to show her where the lake is so they can get rid of it. However, Nick says it's too dark to go now, causing an argument. Their fight is interrupted by Kathy, who forces them to join dinner. That night, Gypsy finds a note in Nick's room with instructions on how to treat a girl right, confirming everything she saw online wasn't the real Nick. At that moment the cops surround the house and Gypsy panics, so she hides with Nick in the closet and they agree to tell the truth because they didn't do anything wrong. A SWAT quickly comes in and arrests them both. Later at the station, Gypsy pretends she didn't know her mother was dead and starts to cry, although the detective doesn't buy it. In another room, Nick tells another detective that he did stab DD so he could run away with Gypsy, clarifying it was her idea. Kathy is also talking to the cops, explaining Nick has a history of mental illness and that Gypsy probably manipulated him. In the end both Gypsy and Nick are sent to jail until it's time for the trial. In the neighborhood, Mel and Lacey gather with the neighbors to light some candles for DD and say goodbye. On the day of the trial, Mel and Lacey watch it on TV and are shocked to see Gypsy walk. In court, Gypsy continues to say she didn't do anything and that she loved her mom, but her lawyer advises her to change the story or she'll be executed. She thinks they can prove Gypsy was abused by presenting DD's false medical records, but because of the power of attorney, only Gypsy's father can access them. Gypsy refuses to call the man, still thinking he's a bad person. Afterward the prison's doctor removes her stomach tube and announces Gypsy is the healthiest person in the building. Later Gypsy calls Lacey and asks her to visit her, saying she needs a friend. Lacey says she'll think about it and hangs up. Feeling desperate, Gypsy finally calls her dad and leaves a message. Eventually Gypsy does get a visitor and is shocked to see her father Rod with the medical records. Rod shows her all the medical conditions DD invented through the years, then he explains he tried to visit Gypsy but DD wouldn't let him and kept moving around. He could only send some checks, which DD cashed in secret. Gypsy doesn't believe him, so Rod shows her some pictures of him with little Gypsy before DD took her away, causing her to have a breakdown. Now they have the medical records. Gypsy's lawyer tells the judge the girl had been abused and DD's death had been self-defense. She also asks for Gypsy and Nick to be judged separately since their circumstances are different. However, the lawyer tells Gypsy in private that she'll have to admit she did it so they can ask for a deal. Lacey sees the lawyer's interview on TV and feels guilty for not seeing the signs of abuse, yet she doesn't pick Gypsy's calls. Mel sees her daughter's attitude and ends up going to visit Gypsy herself. She tells Gypsy that sometimes the only way out is through. After Mel leaves, Gypsy thinks about her last conversation with her mother and their shared love, feeling guilty again. A flashback shows Nick's arrival and how Gypsy gave him the knife. Then she pointed at the room and hid in the bathroom, where she could still hear her mother's screams. Nick came to find her with the knife and kissed her, so Gypsy had to wash blood off the weapon and Nick's skin. For a moment she was in shock, but then she hugged Nick and forced excitement about their future adventure. They went to her room and did the dirty on her bed with the plushies, which didn't last much. Before leaving, Gypsy freed the guinea pigs and took her grandmother's ring. In the present, Gypsy is sent back to her jail and imagines DD is there with her. This story is based on a real crime. After a year of incarceration, Gypsy pled guilty and was given a sentence of 10 years. Nick was also found guilty and was given a life sentence without a chance of parole. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.